I'd like a child. Can you assist me? Madison didn't say it to permanently alter our lives, but rather to beg to borrow my automobile. Around my coffee mug, my hand froze. A faint buzz replaced the dining noise from Seattle. I waited for her to laugh or say it was a joke as I just stared at her. She didn't. She seemed to be holding something back, and her green eyes were dead serious and a bit too sparkling. Eventually, I remarked, "You're not funny." I sounded gruff, like if I were speaking in someone else's voice. She murmured, "Noah, I'm not kidding." My chest constricted at the way she uttered my name. Since our first year at the University of Washington, we had been great friends. We had endured years of making minor mistakes in each other's life, as well as tests, splits, and foolish road trips. However, this level was distinct. I put down the mug so slowly that there was hardly any noise. "All right," I answered cautiously. "You will need to take a step back and begin where you went crazy." She wiped at the corner of her eye and laughed shakily. "I expected you to say something along those lines." I became aware of how strangely normal everything around us appeared when the waitress went by, refilling someone else's coffee. In the window is a neon sign. A lovely country song is playing. Pancakes are being shared by the couple in the corner. And my best friend was asking me to be the father of her child in this small booth. I leaned closer and said, "Madison, what's going on?" She lowered her gaze to her hands. She had short, chipped white polish nails. She twisted the silver ring on her middle finger, the "I don't need anyone" ring she had purchased for herself following her most recent breakup. "Last month, I visited the doctor," she stated. I could hear the tension beneath her calm voice. "Remember? It was only a checkup, like I mentioned." It wasn't. A chilly feeling ran down my back. I recalled the day. She had responded with a thumbs up and a talk later, after I had spent the entire morning sending her dumb memes in an attempt to divert her attention. She then was silent for the remainder of the day. She had behaved perfectly the following morning. I hadn't pressed. "Perhaps I ought to have." She added, "The doctor said I don't have as much time as I thought if I want kids." My throat constricted. "What is meant by that?" "It means my chances are going to drop fast," she remarked, inhaling deeply. "Like, more quickly than usual. I can't pronounce many medical terminology, but what's the bottom line? I might not be able to conceive at all if I wait too long." I was struck hard by what she said. "What kept you from telling me?" Quietly, I asked. She admitted, "I had no idea how. And I didn't want you to stare at me the way you're staring at me now. How do I appear to you? As if I were broken." That was painful. I grabbed her hand from the other side of the table. In mine, it was little and chilly. I said, "You're not broken. You are who you are. Madison is who you are. I've met no more obstinate individual than you. You are the only one who can defeat biology." Her eyes did not lighten, but she gave a feeble smile. She remarked, "I've been thinking for weeks. Roughly what I desire. Concerning my life. Regarding every man I've dated who didn't fit with me. Who, in my opinion, was not a father." She squeezed my fingers. She remarked, "And I kept thinking about you." My heart thumped. I made an effort to maintain a neutral expression, but I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. "Me?" I asked. "I can hardly keep a plan alive, Madison. Do you wish to entrust me with an entire human being?" She chuckled a little. "You're nice. You're steady. In difficult situations, you don't run. Noah, you'd make a wonderful father. You would, I'm sure." Warm and terrible all at once, the words seeped into me. She hurried on, as if she had rehearsed this speech in her mind. "This doesn't have to be romantic. It might be a contract. We can clarify anything. Co-parents. Companions. We can work out the specifics for time, money, and anything else. I'd rather not do this with a complete stranger. I'd rather not choose a random donor off a list." Her gaze returned to mine. "I have faith in you," she said. "More than anybody else. Have faith." It ought to have been pleasant. Rather, it was like a burden. Because she was unaware of something. She had captured my heart for years. It had gradually caught up with me. The way her entire body chuckled. She always got extra fries just in case. Yet she still took half of mine. On movie nights, she would curl up on my couch and rest her head on my shoulder as if it were the most natural position in the world. However, she had consistently drawn that invisible line. Best companions. Nearly family. Secure. She was now requesting that I step over a line that was so large that I couldn't even see the other side. "Speak up," she muttered. I stared at the table while running a hand through my hair. On the glossy surface of my unopened coffee, my reflection distorted. A siren wailed and faded somewhere outside. I said, "What about love?" The word didn't seem to fit what I was saying. "How about a partnership? A companion? Are you simply ignoring that section?" She tightened her jaw. She remarked, "I don't have time to wait for some ideal guy who might never show up. I know my picker is broken because I've dated enough. And, Noah, I'm exhausted. I'm sick of risking everything and having my heart broken. I'm looking for anything reliable." She gave me a direct stare, and beneath the terror was steel. "I'll rely on you." I took a swallow. "How about me?" Quietly, I asked, "How do I feel about this?" She paused. She said, "Be whatever you want to be. We may limit the conversation to the baby, or perhaps it may become more. I'm not sure. I'm not making any promises I can't keep. I'm simply being truthful. I have to decide on this quickly. Additionally, I want you to be the father." Something deep within me was wrenched by the honesty in her voice. She might find someone else if I refused. Some donor number on a chart, some stranger. My stomach clenched when I imagined her holding a baby who looked nothing like me and a lot like her. I would be permanently bound to her if I said yes. As a co-parent. As something. What if she never reciprocated my love for her? Is that how I could live? My silence was misinterpreted by her, who responded, "You don't have to decide right now. Just give it some thought. Please." I am aware of its size. I realize this is a lot to ask. That final syllable was when her voice broke. I gave her a serious look. The shadowy bags beneath her eyes. The way her shoulders drooped as though she were toting a brick-filled rucksack. The worry she was making a concerted effort to conceal. I heard my own voice remark, without giving it much thought, if we really do this, Madison, that makes me a father. Not merely a contributor. Not merely a birth certificate name." "I understand," she muttered. "And you don't mind that? With me present? Actually there?" Slowly, she nodded. "If I didn't want that, I wouldn't ask you." I was certain she could hear my heart thumping so loudly. I let out a breath, leaned back, and felt the floor move beneath me. "So I suppose," I replied softly, "I'm going to be a father." She reached for her mouth. I briefly feared she might run out of the booth. Rather, tears welled up in her eyes, thick and large, and they poured over and down her cheeks. Before I could stop myself, I reached out and used my thumb to wipe one away. I felt a spark shoot up my arm at that slight contact. "I'm grateful," she muttered. "You don't understand how much this means to me." She was mistaken. I sensed that I was going to learn the precise meaning of it, for us both. Nathan Reed and Madison Carter? The peaceful hum of the fertility clinic waiting area was broken by the nurse's voice. She had a clipboard in her hand as she stood at the doorway, grinning her well-practiced, kind smile. Other couples were sitting around us, holding hands, staring at the floor, and whispering. My hands were perspiring. Madison got to his feet before me. As she moved, her fingertips touched my knee, and even that slight contact gave me a start. "That's us," she remarked, turning to face me. "We." Feeling as though I had entered someone else's life, I forced myself to stand up and followed her. The air smelled of coffee and cleanliness. The walls were soft gray, and I kept thinking, "You said yes. In fact, you said yes." We followed the nurse down a hallway to a tiny consultation room with 3 chairs and a round table. The walls were covered with framed images of infants. Parents grinning. Tiny fingers. Cozy blankets. My throat constricted. The nurse added, "Dr. Howard will be right in. You can begin working on the paperwork now." After placing a pile of paperwork on the table, she walked out, shutting the door behind her. After exhaling, Madison collapsed into a chair. "This gives it a sense of realism," she remarked quietly. I sat next to her, just close enough for our shoulders to brush, but not quite. "When you asked me to be a dad over waffles, it was pretty real," I said. She smiled a little. "You had the option to run." "Yes, they were tasty waffles," I shrugged. As she picked up the top form, her smile grew and then waned. "All right," she whispered. "History of medicine. Family matters. Screenings for genetics. Good times." My hand went to the second shape. A line toward the top caused my eyes to freeze. Patient relationship, spouse, partner, known donor, other, what do we look for? I inquired. Leaning in, she looked. My entire body tensed as her hair touched my arm. She picked up the pen and whispered hastily, "Known donor." I covered her hand before she could mark it. "Hey," I murmured. "Recall my remarks from the diner. I'm more than just a donation if we do this. I am a dad." She raised her gaze to meet mine. She merely looked at me for a long moment, as if she was attempting to read my face. Then, she said, "What do we check?" I took a swallow. I said, "Partner. I suppose." The term seemed simultaneously too large and too little. Not a boyfriend. Not the hubby. Simply put, partner. However, it was more accurate than donor. She remained still. I quickly added, "If you don't like that, we can just write in other." She said, scarcely raising her voice above a breath, "I'm fine with it." She looked at partner. Like a puzzle piece attempting to find its position, something moved in my chest. We spent some time filling out the applications in solitude. Sicknesses in the family. Previous operations. Allergies. I wrote quickly because I cared too much and wanted to finish this section quickly, not because I didn't care. Madison's palm touched mine once more as I returned the final sheet to her. I questioned whether she sensed the sparks as well, or if I was the only one desiring something that wasn't truly there. The door opened. A woman carrying a tablet entered and said, "Good morning," wearing a white coat. The creases around her mouth were worn, and her eyes were compassionate. "My name is Dr. Howard." We sat down again after shaking hands. She looked at the paperwork. "So you're considering using Noah as the biological father to proceed with conception," she said. "Is that correct?" Madison gave a nod. "Yes." "And how long have you known each other?" I said, 10 years. Dr. Howard's eyebrows went up. "That is a strong basis. Dating, married, or what?" "Partners," Madison blurted out. She gave me a quick glance, but I continued to focus on the doctor. "All right," said Dr. Howard. "That could mean many different things, but the most important thing is that you're in agreement. Have expectations been discussed? Legal agreements? Co-parenting?" I said, "We're working on it. We intend to consult a lawyer regarding the legal matters." "Well," she said, "I advise doing that. In terms of medicine, we now have a few choices. We can use IVF, which is more involved and costly, or intrauterine insemination, which is less invasive. Couples sometimes decide to attempt getting pregnant naturally for a while before going to therapy," she continued, glancing between us. "Financial resources, time, and comfort level all play a role." My neck started to get hot. I was afraid to look at Madison. It appeared that Dr. Howard could feel the strain. She stated, "We don't have to make that decision today. We do some testing first. Hormone levels, blood testing, Madison's ultrasound, and Noah's analysis." Her gaze fell upon me. "Fun," I muttered. She grinned. "Although it's not everyone's favorite day, it provides us with a place to start. We collaborate to create a plan after we observe results." Madison nodded as if she were at a business meeting. She inquired, "How long do I have?" "Really?" Dr. Howard's expression grew softer. "Every situation is unique," she stated. "However, based on your past records, which I looked over before to this interview, I believe the next year or two is crucial. Your odds are better the earlier we begin. Between 1 to 2 years. There wasn't no time. It wasn't forever, though?" Madison murmured softly, "I don't want to wait. I've already tried not to freak out for a month." Howard, doctor, bent forward. "After that, we'll proceed. Today, we will draw blood. This week, make an ultrasound appointment. We'll discuss our possibilities after we have everything. I advise you both to carefully consider how you would like this to appear in the interim. Being a parent is challenging enough. It is more difficult when done with confusion in the middle." We provided additional answers. Talking about prior lovers, sex lives, and even therapy at times felt strange. However, Madison remained composed and straightforward, and I made an effort to emulate her. I gave her a shoulder squeeze as I was leaving the lab when it was my turn. For a moment longer than necessary, her hand was in mine. "Hey," she whispered. "I appreciate you being here. What other place would I be?" I tried to jest, but it came out quite blunt. We were finally outside again, enjoying the refreshing Seattle air after what seemed like an eternity. As usual, the sky was gray, but everything seemed louder and crisper. Automobiles sped by. On the corner, a bus hissed to a stop. Silently, we made our way to the parking garage. I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets and remarked, "Well, that was a lot." She laughed breathlessly. "Indeed. Not precisely a day at the spa." We arrived at my vehicle. I opened it, but neither of us entered immediately. Leaning against the passenger door, she gazed at me with that combination of dread and strength that I was beginning to identify. "Are you sorry you said yes?" she inquired abruptly. Nothing in that clinic struck as hard as the inquiry. I moved in closer. "No," I replied. She looked into my face. "You paused." "I'm scared," I said. "If I wasn't, I'd be a fool. I have no idea what sort of father I will be. I'm not sure how this affects us. However, I have no regrets about saying yes to you." Her shoulders relaxed somewhat. She remarked, "I'm afraid too. It's not only the baby. About us. Regarding losing you in the event that this fails." My chest constricted. "You will never lose me. That's impossible for you to know," she said. I responded, "Yes, I can," with more conviction than I actually felt. "We will engage in combat. We will make a mistake. When the infant is sobbing at 3 in the morning, we'll most likely say foolish things. But, Madison, I'm not leaving. That's the only thing I know for sure." Her eyes were bright. I briefly believed that she might come forward and bridge the tiny distance between us. My phone began to ring. Both of us leaped. I looked at the display. It showed the name of my boss. I was fully aware of the purpose of the call. The promotion. Moving to San Diego. The one that we had been discussing for months. I allowed it to ring. "Won't you respond?" she inquired. "No," I hurriedly replied, pressing the quiet button and putting the phone back in my pocket. "Not at this time." She furrowed her brows. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," I said under false pretenses. "Work-related items. It can wait. I promised myself I will elaborate later, once I had the appropriate words." The timing was better after that. After determining if I could truly say no to a significant job advancement and yes to becoming a father in the same month. "This evening, please come over," she asked abruptly. My heart thumped. "Tonight, we must speak," she stated, relating to money, timetables, where we would reside after the baby is born. Everything. This is not something I want to happen by accident. We're acting intentionally if we're doing it. "All right," I replied. "I'll bring pizza." She gave a small smile. "You will, of course." I arrived at her apartment that evening with a knot in my stomach and 2 enormous pizzas. A floor lamp and a candle on the coffee table lit her living room. Papers with timelines, budgets, and advantages and disadvantages were already dispersed. We spoke for hours. Regarding daycare. Regarding health insurance. Pertaining to weekends and evenings. Regarding who would be the first to wake up with the infant. The papers eventually fell aside, leaving us to simply sit back on the couch with the candle flickering low. She said, "There's one thing we haven't decided." "What is that?" My mouth dried up as her eyes locked with mine. With a gentle yet firm tone, she questioned, "Are we going to try the old-fashioned way first, or are we going to let the clinic handle it?" The room became quite quiet. My heart struck my ribs hard. I didn't know what to say next as I stared at her, torn between all I wanted and everything I was scared to lose. I took a while to respond to her. More weighty than all the paperwork strewn across the coffee table, the question hung there between us. Clinic or antiquated? Madison, dressed in black leggings and an oversized gray UW hoodie, sat cross-legged on the couch. A few strands of her hair fell about her face, but it was in an untidy bun. Her cheekbones were softly shadowed by the flickering candle on the table. Although she appeared composed, her fingers were tugging the sleeve's edge. "It's under control if we go through the clinic," she remarked, breaking the silence. "Timed. We are fully aware of what is taking place. Some distance exists." She took a swallow. "It becomes complicated if we don't. Difficult. As though it hadn't already." "What are you looking for?" Quietly, I asked. For a moment, I was able to see through all of her barriers as her eyes met mine. Yes, there was fear, but there was more than that. It appeared to be a lot of hope. "I'm not sure," she said. "I want to keep this tidy, part of myself. Neat lines. Roles that we can name. However, another aspect of me," she pressed her lips together and drifted off. "What else about you?" I inquired. She looked at me. She muttered, "There's another part of me that doesn't want this to feel like a transaction. Noah, I'm not purchasing an automobile. My goal is to create a living being. You're more than simply a sample, too." The words sounded as if it had been scorched. "You are who you are." My chest hurt the way she said it. I unintentionally moved closer. Our knees touched. "It won't be just biology for me if we do it the old-fashioned manner," I remarked softly. I take it you are aware of that? Her breath caught. What is meant by that? It means I already care about you, I answered softly. A great deal. Perhaps more than I ought to. And I won't be able to act like it's simply logistics if we go over that boundary. It became very silent in the room. I could hear the distant traffic outside on her Seattle street, as well as the soft hum of her refrigerator in the kitchen. As if she were practicing the phrases, she repeated, "You care more about me than you should?" I took a swallow. It was there. It wasn't a complete confession, but it was more than I had ever spoken out. I whispered, "I've been your fallback option for years, Madison. Your designated driver, your +1, your phone call at 2 in the morning. That was sufficient, I have always convinced myself. However, this?" I made a hazy gesture between us. "For me, this is not casual. Despite my best efforts, I doubt I will be able to make it casual." Her eyes were bright. She briefly had an almost angry expression, but it was directed at something greater than me. She said, "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" I said, "Because you didn't want that. The line was always drawn by you. You joked that we were like siblings. When you discussed your type, it was always the complete antithesis of who I am. Tall, sulky, tattooed musicians. All right, I understand," she responded, letting out a little, ashamed laugh. "My taste is bad. This is not an argument." She touched my knee. Stupid. Although we both grinned, the atmosphere between us had changed. Charged and sharper. She lowered her gaze to her hands. She said, "I'm not sure how I feel. I am aware that you have my utmost trust. I am aware that your eyes come to mind when I visualize a baby. I am aware that the thought of doing this with someone else sickens me. But, Noah, my record with guys is garbage. I no longer rely on my intuition to guide my decisions." My chest constricted. "So you're afraid of picking me and making a mistake?" "I fear losing you," she murmured. "I don't simply lose a partner if this doesn't work out. My best pal is gone. Additionally, if a newborn is in the middle of that." Her voice broke. I can't even contemplate it. I wanted to grab her, embrace her, and assure her that I would never allow that to occur. However, I had already made a vow today. I couldn't make a promise to someone I wasn't sure I could keep. What if we quit trying to make this neat? I replied softly. What if we just be honest throughout and acknowledge that it's already messy? She raised her head. We establish guidelines, I stated. To keep communication in, not to keep feelings out. Don't be silent. Don't flee. Therapy if necessary. Even in our moments of rage, we promise to prioritize the child. And we acknowledge that whatever is going on between us could change. As she swallowed, her throat bobbed. And how do we raise the child? I let out a breath. It nearly hurt how hard my heart was beating. I muttered, I want it to mean something. I don't want you to take your first steps as a mother in the next hallway in a sterile room with a plastic cup. I'd like to attempt to avoid it if we can. Perhaps she was searching for doubt in my eyes. Or to tell a falsehood. Are you certain? She muttered. No, I answered plainly. I'm afraid. But I have faith in you. Furthermore, I'm positive I don't want to look back and think we treated our child like a research experiment. Her mouth quivered. I lifted my hand and tucked a flyaway lock of hair behind her ear. I kept my fingertips on the nape of her neck. She had a warm skin. We move slowly, I remarked. We converse. We stop if you change your mind at any point. There is no pressure. No, if we don't succeed tonight, we'll fail. Her eyes widened as she nodded. Gently, I said, say it. You must say it to me. Agree, she muttered. We move slowly. We converse. If any of us wishes to quit, we do so. All right, I inhaled. We gazed at one another for a considerable amount of time. Then, slowly, like we were both being pulled by the same invisible thread, we leaned in. Her lips touched mine for the first time in a gentle, tentative, almost inquisitive manner. Nothing could have prepared me for how real it felt, even though I had kissed her 1,000 times. How appropriate. How horrifying. Something broke inside of me as she gave me a real kiss in return. It was not hurried. It wasn't a crazy, hectic situation. It was thorough, meticulous, and filled with everything we hadn't discussed aloud in years. We often drew apart to check on one another, murmuring, "Are you okay?" as we breathed heavily together, her palm on my chest and my forehead against hers. Are you certain? We are able to stop. We didn't. I won't go over every aspect again. We own that portion. However, I will state that it was not clinical in any way. No numbers, no timers, no charts. Just two people, with all the associated hope and dread, finally entering the same room after 10 years of orbiting one another. Madison laid with her head on my shoulder and her fingertips making gentle circles on my chest after the room had quieted down and the candle had burned down to a tiny pool of wax. She said, "I didn't expect it to feel like that. Bad, like that, or good, like that." I asked. Against my flesh, she smiled. "Well," she muttered. "Very scary." I wrapped my arm around her. I felt tethered and weightless as I gazed at the ceiling. "This makes a difference," I said. "Yes," she inhaled. "I understand." With the stack of budget documents partially on the floor and us twisted up, we fell asleep like that. Her bedroom wall was stripped by sunshine that crept through the slats in the morning. On the nightstand, my phone buzzed, a fresh email alert. I knew who it was from without having to look. San Diego. The end of the week is the deadline. Madison didn't even wake up when I flipped the screen face down. Her eyes were still heavy from sleep as she rolled toward me. She gave me a very close look for a moment, as if she had never seen me in this bed before. "Hey," she whispered. I said, "Hey." Between us, there was a delicate, silent sense. Not regret, precisely. "Not easy, though? Are we all right?" she inquired. I touched her face with my thumb. I replied, "We will be. Remember, we're all in this together." Her gaze grew softer. Agreement. Make a commitment. Weeks went by. We used a shared calendar to keep track of cycle dates. She purchased an absurd quantity of ovulation tests. Occasionally, we made light-hearted jokes about it, referring to it as science time, giving each other embarrassing high fives in the hallway, and laughing when we both became overly preoccupied. Beneath the humor, however, was a knot of anxiety that was getting tighter every day. I experienced the tight pull every time my phone buzzed with another email from my supervisor that said, "Just checking in on your decision." Madison still hadn't heard about San Diego from me. "I'm waiting for the right moment," I assured myself. Since she was already feeling nervous, I told myself I didn't want to put her under any more stress. I told myself several things, but the truth was quite straightforward. I was worried that she would view me differently after I spoke it aloud. As if they might go. The first month passed quickly. In her bathroom, Madison tightened her teeth as she gazed at the single line on the pregnancy test. I felt worthless as I stood in the doorway. "It's only a month," I muttered. "At this time, it has no significance." Her voice was tight as she said, "I know. I understand." She walked past me after tossing the test in the trash with a little too much force. Before she straightened her shoulders, I saw them tremble once. She sat quietly on my couch that night, resting her head in my lap as we watched a sitcom that neither of us was really watching. Slowly and steadily, I ran my fingers through her hair as if I could ease the terror within her. I answered, "We'll keep trying. We have time." She whispered, "Not as much as other people." For that, I had no response. My boss's emails started to become phone calls by the middle of the second month. Next, a text message, "Please let me know by Friday. This is a big project. This cannot be left open indefinitely." Friday. With my hand hovering over the call button, I gazed at the screen in my car outside my apartment. San Diego promised a new life, greater money, and a major promotion. A new beginning, close to the ocean, and good schools. However, it also required leaving Madison, or attempting to persuade her to leave everything behind and accompany me while we were still establishing our identities. My spiral was broken as my phone buzzed once more. It was Madison this time. There were just 4 words in her text. "Would you be able to visit?" I felt sick to my stomach. As I went, I answered. It felt like it took longer than usual to get to her apartment. The rain pattered softly against the windshield, and the sky was gloomy. My heart was racing by the time I made it up the stairs of her flat. Before I could knock, she opened the door. She had a pallid face. She had large eyes. In her palm, she held something little and white. My brain briefly refused to make the connection. Then I noticed the 2 lines of pink. I momentarily lost my ability to breathe. 2 lines of pink. They were really little. Clear yet faint. Cheap plastic with only a few stripes. However, they struck me more forcefully than any phone conversation, meeting, or life plan I had ever created. "Madison," I said in a whisper. "Is that?" She nodded, her eyes rapidly brimming. Her voice trembled as she continued. I took 3. This is how they all appear. I entered and shut the door after myself. Suddenly, the world seemed so far away. Only those 2 lines, her and myself. I tasted the word as I carefully whispered, we're pregnant. Her mouth quivered. A tear rolled down her face and spilled over. I believe so, she muttered. Yeah, but I still need the doctor's confirmation. I believe we are. It wasn't until I was in front of her that I realized I was moving. Her knuckles were white from gripping the exam so tightly. I removed it from her hand with care and placed it on the small entry table. I then drew her into my embrace. She cracked, not in a dramatic, cinematic manner. She sobbed quietly and tremblingly, pressing her forehead against my chest and twisting her fingers into my shirt as if I were the only thing that was still solid. She choked. I'm afraid. I'm scared because I really wanted this. My own eyes were burning. I put my arms around her more tightly. I replied, I'm afraid too. But we're both afraid. All right. This is not unique to you. Not even for a moment. Her shoulders continued to tremble as she nodded against me. We ended up on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder and her legs splayed across my lap. Like another piece of her life, the test was placed on the coffee table between a stack of unopened mail and an empty mug. After a while, she replied in a raspy voice, I already called the clinic. They can come see me for blood work tomorrow morning. I'll accompany you, I said. You have a job. I'm not interested. I'll work that out. She didn't dispute. For a while, we just listened to each other's breathing while sitting in silence. Madison with a round belly, a small hand around my finger, late nights, diapers, arguments, laughter, and tiny sneakers by the door were all in my head. San Diego lurks beneath all of that like a shadowy shadow. Friday. Deadline. I firmly pushed it down. Not right now. She really needed me here. Later, I could handle that mess. What's on your mind? She said softly. I stated, I'll need to learn how to install a car seat. She let out a little chuckle. And construct a crib, she continued. You're tall. You can handle the challenging tasks. Rude. She hooked her fingers together with mine. She remarked, I'm thinking of all the times a doctor told me not to get my hopes up. I'm thinking now that I might be able to have them up. Only a bit. I suggested that we raise them gradually. One step at a time. First, tomorrow. Next up. All right. All right. The clinic felt different the following morning. It had been uneasy jokes, paperwork, and queries the last time. The entire building seemed to be holding its breath alongside us this time. The blood of Madison was drawn. Dr. Howard viewed the data on her tablet while we sat in the same little room, hands clasped together. Well, congratulations, she replied at last, looking up with a genuine smile rather than the professional one. You have good levels. Madison, you are expecting a child. Expecting a child. When she uttered it, the word struck more forcefully. Madison exhaled as if she had been submerged for weeks. I watched her expression, anticipating anxiety and panic. The first thing I noticed was unadulterated delight. Oh God, she muttered. Eyes brimming again, she put her palm over her lips. The tears had a different appearance this time. My smile wouldn't go away. My cheeks ached. My chest didn't fit my heart. Dr. Howard discussed foods, vitamins, items to avoid, and risks associated with the first trimester. I made an effort to take it all in, but a part of me kept thinking the same thing. A tiny person is beginning to grow inside of her. Half of her. Half of me. Madison paused in front of one of the baby photos on the wall as they were leaving. A baby with small hands under its chin, napping on its tummy. Are you all right? I inquired. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, she replied. Noah, this is real. Like, very, really real. I pulled her in by putting my arm around her shoulders. Unthinking, she leaned against me. I said, we're going to work it out. We'll make a lot of mistakes. However, we'll work things out. We returned to her house and sat on her couch again, this time with our notebooks open, throughout the afternoon. Lists. Things we had to do. We would tell people. When we would inform them. She hurriedly replied, not yet, when I inquired about telling her parents. My mom organizing the baby shower when it's the size of a blueberry is too much for me to handle. Hey, don't be disrespectful to the blueberry, I remarked. She grinned, warm but exhausted. She jokingly said, Blueberry Reed. Has a strange sound. The name can be worked out later. For supper, I prepared tomato soup and grilled cheese since it was simple and she liked it. I cut the sandwiches into triangles like we were 5, and she teased me about it. Both of us were acting like it was easy. It wasn't. While I was doing the dishes, my phone buzzed on the counter. Master. Before the notice faded, the email's subject line appeared on my lock screen. San Diego offer. Last reminder. From the living room came Madison's voice. Hi, Noah. Could you please take my hoodie off the chair? Yeah. I called, my heart leaping into my throat as I quickly tapped to lock the device. I took her sweater, stuffed the phone in my pocket, and dried my hands. That night, I promised myself I would tell her. Then, with her hair in a disheveled knot and wearing one of my old t-shirts that she had stolen years before, she entered the kitchen and inquired if she should give up coffee entirely. Her palm was subconsciously resting low on her stomach. I also choked. I said half CAF. We'll ask Dr. Howard when we see him next. In the end, we decided to see a movie. Halfway through, she dozed off, cuddled up against me, her breath warm across my neck. My thoughts were racing as I gazed at the ceiling in the darkness. Inform her. Now tell her. Before it's too late, take action. I didn't. She texted me a photo of a small pair of baby socks she had seen online the following day. My phone began to buzz once again as I was still looking at the picture. Identical screen. 2 messages. Madison, should I purchase these? Or is that unlucky? My supervisor said, I need your final response today. That evening, my stomach was in knots as I traveled to her apartment. I spent the entire day mentally practicing speeches. I had made up my mind. I was aware of my obligations. Tell her the truth first. Then give my employer a call. The flat was silent as I used my key to enter. On the table, a candle was blazing. I had left my laptop at her apartment the previous evening so we could work on finances together, and it was open. Madison sat on the couch with her face white and her back straight. My email inbox gleamed on my laptop screen. It was difficult to overlook the subject line at the top. Scenario. Madison, she remarked, but I can't do this with someone who has 1 foot out the door. I won't. I feel unfairly treated. It's unfair to the infant. The word baby struck me hard. Her voice was hardly audible above a whisper as she concluded, I need you to leave. Now, before I make a foolish statement. It felt like someone was crushing my chest. I wanted to argue, fight, and make her hear every excuse, every worry, and every apology that was trying to get past me. However, I noticed that her hand was placed against her stomach, the shuddering of her shoulders. Her eyes pleaded with me for room. I gave a nod. I apologized, but my words were insufficient for what I had done. I sincerely apologize. She turned her head away. I left. My phone buzzed once more in the dim parking lot outside my car. Master, I wanted to be sure you had decided. We will have to proceed with someone else if we don't hear before the end of the day. My hands trembled as I gazed at the message. Then I took the one action that I ought to have taken days earlier. I made a call. Picking up quickly, my supervisor said, Hey, Noah, I was ready to send you another email. Thus, I interrupted, I'm not coming. Quiet. What? I declared, I'm not taking the job. I intend to remain in Seattle. A long pause ensued. Are you sure? He inquired. This is a significant advancement for you. I understand, I replied. I pictured Madison's face. On her table was the test. Her hand on her abdomen. Here, my life is evolving. I must be there for it. I can't divide myself in two and hope for the best. He let out a sigh. Reed, you're a good man. I honor that. I'll inform the leadership. The door isn't always closed. However, this position won't become available again very soon. I get it. We ended the call. Breathing heavily, I sat in the silent car and gazed at my reflection on the windshield. The decision in my chest felt obvious for the first time since this began. The following morning, I took a car back to her house. She had her fists clenched around her phone as she stared at a point on the wall in the clinic's waiting area. She appeared exhausted, and not only in the way that comes with pregnancy. Her eyes widened at the sight of me. She questioned, What are you doing here? I said, I'm where I should be. I took a seat beside her in the chair. She didn't lean in, but she also didn't move away. I said, I called my boss. I declined San Diego. I intend to stay. She tightened her jaw. She remarked, You make that choice because it's right for you, not because you're attempting to correct this particular moment. I said, It is right for me. I believe that my first priority was the promotion. However, it felt awful to imagine my existence there without you, without our child. Empty. I ought to have recognized that earlier. I ought to have informed you earlier. I made a mistake. Terribly. Today, I'm not pleading with you for forgiveness. I just wanted to let you know that I won't be leaving. She peered into my eyes, searching for the lie. She whispered, and when you get that big, life-altering email next? So what? I answered, then I show it to you. Even though I'm afraid of it. Particularly if it frightens me. Even when it's messy, you stated that you wanted honesty. At last, I'm prepared to offer you that. As she swallowed, her throat bobbed. She muttered, you hurt me. I understand, I replied. And I'm sorry I did. But Madison, you have my affection. Not as a fallback. Not as a secure choice. I cherish you. For a long time, I have. I'm going to be there for this baby regardless of whether you ever say it back. Appointments with doctors. Feedings during night. First actions. Everything. You won't ever have to question whether I'll stay. Her lashes were wet with tears. She huffed. You choose the worst times to say things like that. Yes, I said. I have terrible timing. From the doorway, the nurse's voice called her name. Madison, we're prepared to receive you. Slowly, she got to her feet. She paused for a moment. She then extended her hand. She whispered, come on, partner. The first time we see our blueberry, you won't miss it. I felt such a rush of relief that my knees nearly buckled. I grasped her hand. It was there, though still a little unsteady. The tech applied gel to her stomach and gently moved the wand in the dark ultrasound room. The screen wavered. I didn't breathe. Then all of a sudden it was there. A slight flicker. The technician grinned and said, that's your baby. And that tiny throb? The heartbeat is that. Madison let out a gasp. Her gaze swept across mine. Can you hear it? She said in a whisper. With my throat too constricted to speak, I nodded. It was small, steady, and swift. The sound of a new life that already loved it, but was unaware of how messy and afraid its parents were. I gave Madison's hand a squeeze. I muttered, I'm here, more to her than to the infant. I won't be leaving. I am your father. She gave me a tiny, shaky smile as she turned her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I think you're real, she said quietly. And, just for the record, I also adore you. That's half the reason I was so angry. At last, something inside of me came together. The sound of our baby's heartbeat filled the room as I leaned down to kiss her forehead. I want a baby, she said when she first asked me. Can you assist me? I mistook her request for a favor. I came to terms with the reality as I sat there holding her hand as our child's heart pounded loudly and forcefully. Her request for my assistance in becoming a mother wasn't the only one. She had given me the opportunity to become something I never realized I so strongly desired, her spouse, as well as a dad.
If this story stayed with your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends.